We like to think of ourselves as standalone operating systems. You have your own personality, your own senses that tell you what's real, and a moral compass that points true north. But how much of that is actually yours? What if the thoughts in your head, the choices you make, and the identity you hold so closely are actually being authored by the people standing next to you? We are biologically wired as social animals. Long before we had cities or laws, sticking with the group was the only way to survive. That ancient hardware is still running in our brains today, constantly scanning for ways to fit in. To see how heavy this invisible pressure really is, we can measure it. We'll start with a phone call and escalate all the way up to the point where social pressure can lead us to violate our own deeply held ethics. To understand why we do the things we do, we have to look past the illusion of the independent individual and examine the hidden social forces shaping our reality. The most subtle level of social influence happens before anyone even speaks. In 1977, researcher Mark Snyder set up a simple experiment using telephone conversations between strangers. Male subjects were handed a photograph of either an attractive or an unattractive woman. They were told the woman in the picture was the person on the other end of the line. In reality, the photo was fake, and the woman on the phone was a completely random participant. This diagram maps out exactly what happened next. Men who expected to be talking to an attractive woman naturally acted warmer and friendlier on the call. The woman on the other end, picking up on that warmth, responded by being friendlier and more engaging herself. Psychologists call this a self-fulfilling prophecy. A hidden expectation held by one person literally rewrites the behavior of another, without either of them realizing a script has been handed to them. So our expectations can manipulate strangers. But what happens when social pressure forces us to do something that violates our own beliefs? In 1959, Leon Festinger and James Carlsmith designed a study to find out. Here is the layout of their experiment. Participants were forced to do an agonizingly boring task for an hour. Afterward, the researchers asked them to lie to the next subject in the waiting room and tell them the task was incredibly fun. To do this favor, subjects were paid either $20 or just $1. Later, everyone was asked how they actually felt about the task. The group paid $20 knew exactly why they lied. They did it for the money. But the group paid $1 had a problem. $1 wasn't enough to justify lying to someone. So their brains solved the problem by rewriting the memory. They reported that the task was actually quite enjoyable. This is cognitive dissonance, the intense mental friction of holding conflicting beliefs. When our actions don't match our reality and we lack a clear external justification, we will unconsciously alter our own memories just to make the math work. We can edit our memories. But can peer pressure actually make you doubt the physical objects right in front of your face? Enter Solomon Asch's vision tests. Look at this diagram. A subject was placed in a room with several other people and asked to state which of the three lines, A, B, or C, matched the reference line. It's obviously line C, but the other people in the room were actors, and they systematically began giving the wrong answer out loud. Faced with a unanimous group insisting that the wrong line was the correct match, 75% of the real subjects eventually caved and gave the obviously incorrect answer at least once. The urge for conformity is powerful enough that we will look directly at physical evidence, ignore our own eyes, and agree with the crowd just to avoid standing out from the pack. If a group of peers can break our perception of reality, we have to look at what happens when that pressure is formalized. What happens when the group becomes an institution and the peer becomes an authority figure? In 1971, the Stanford prison experiment showed exactly how fast that structure alters identity. Within days, perfectly normal college students randomly assigned to be guards began psychologically punishing their peers who were assigned to be prisoners. The assigned role dictated their reality. But the most formal test of this influence was conducted a decade earlier, here at Yale University, by psychologist Stanley Milgram. Milgram brought in everyday people and sat them in front of a shock generator. A stern scientist in a lab coat instructed them to read memory questions to a stranger in the next room, and to push a button delivering an electric shock every time the stranger answered incorrectly. With each mistake, the voltage went up. This chart shows the outcome. Psychologists predicted that only 1 or 2% of the population would go all the way to the end. In reality, 65% of participants administered the maximum 450-volt shock, a potentially lethal dose. simply because they were told to. All of these participants expressed discomfort or a desire to stop, yet the majority continued. Milgram later wrote that the average person, despite having intact morals, lacks the resources to stand up to an authority figure in this kind of setting. The concept of a completely independent, uninfluenced self is a comforting myth. We are highly moldable creatures, navigating a massive current of social forces. Our expectations steer others, our memories warp to justify our actions, and the pressure of the group can override our senses and our morals. Acknowledging this vulnerability isn't a defeat, it's a roadmap. Once you know how the system works, you understand that your expectations can unintentionally shape how others behave. You recognize when your brain is inventing justifications. And you realize that questioning authority is a necessary survival skill. By making these invisible social forces visible, we finally get a chance to notice the pressure as it's happening. And in that moment of awareness, we gain the rare opportunity to make a choice that is truly our own.